Sexual harassment, the Me Too hashtag, sexual dominance, the fight over sex. Once again, we see ourselves here. In men and women, we need to have this discussion more. And this is a podcast for men. And guys, we need to talk about this. Because if we don't talk about this, we will keep having sex be a reaction to our repression, and we'll never normalize it. The most important thing we can get from this is that the tools of seduction, something that we talk about endlessly here at the TSL Podcast, something that I've built a company, The Sexual Life, on, is that the skills of seduction, the skills of being social, the skills of sexual escalation are never to sexually harass. They're not there to rape or force yourself on a woman. And they're there to empower you. They're there to give you the opportunity so that you don't have to do that and women walk away with a great experience. And see, I think we don't get that enough. And there's so much that goes into this whole topic that is fueled so much that we don't talk about, that we get by or we speak within an echo chamber of what's going on. And man, it's a terrible, terrible thing. Look, guys, it's October the 17th. This is the TSL Podcast. Steve Mayeda here. I was requested by the TSL guys on their board to make a video about this because there's so much going on about it. And there's a lot of guys talking about on the Austin Men's Development Board about just how fucked up this is. And see, this is the crazy thing. We talk about a lot of stuff like rape culture or people jumping to hysteria or exaggerated feminism, the third wave feminism, as they call it, being too much and oppressing us as men. And it's this horrible experience. And I want to get to that. But what I want to talk about here is just because there are problems in our society towards men, and there are, right? And there are for women too. And this is the point of this, is that just because there are problems in our society, like you go to court, you get screwed over for child support, custody, and all this sort of stuff. You get screwed over in alimony, you get taken advantage of in all these different ways as a man, does not negate the fact that this also could happen to women. And in many ways, it can happen a lot worse. And so because of that, feminism started. In the late 60s and the 70s, feminism came about empowering women to speak up in all these different ways. And I don't want to get into a history lesson of that, and I don't even want to get into the stats of it, because this is what I hate, is when we stop seeing each other as people, when we stop seeing each other as sexual beings. Man, this is what the sexual life is about, and we're going to get to this more. Then we rely on labeling people. We label people, we rely on identifying them immediately. We use stats to replace conversation, sharing with somebody else. And then we start fearing what the other person thinks, that if we side too much with women and we're a man, we're in danger. Or if we're a woman and we side too much with men, we're in danger. No, we need to be talking. We are supposed to influence each other. And the fact that we haven't, as a culture, for decades been able to influence each other freely and sexually, we build up this repression. Man, it's fucked up. And all of a sudden, everything makes sense. If you're a feminist, feminism makes sense. If you're a men's rights activist, that all makes sense. The red pill stuff makes sense. MGTOW makes sense. And all of a sudden, we're not using our dicks and pussies. We're not using our hearts and souls. And instead, we're fighting a fight that never ends. That's really an expression of ourself with a person 1,000 miles away that can't be solved. Look, I know that's a lot there, guys. That's a lot. But let's get to this first. Number one, if somebody's been sexually harassed, right? They don't need to be judged. This doesn't mean it's weakness for men. This doesn't mean that somehow you're attacked. This doesn't mean that your problems also aren't negated. And one of the things that also on the flip side of that is that I never liked about the whole rape culture thing, that I never liked about extreme feminism, and this isn't all of it. This also isn't negating your claim if you're a woman and you're claiming the Me Too, and there's plenty of guys that have. I mean, my cousin has. You know, being sexually abused by a woman, being sexually abused by other men, being women sexually abused also by women. But the fact of the matter is most of it is women being sexually abused or harassed or whatever by men. Now, here's the problem. And this is big time, especially for myself. You know, Steve, Sexual Life, I've been doing this for 11 years. We'll get into my story a little bit, but not just about me. The problem is that when people see me, they see a label. When my biggest problem with extreme feminism, my biggest problem for all the rape culture stuff, man, it's terrible. Especially when they find out, I'm Steve and I teach men about sex. Oh my God. I teach men to rape women. This is the assumption. Or I teach this sleazy thing. Man, let me tell you, Seduction is the core of humanity. It is beautiful. It's one of the greatest experiences of your life. I don't care who you are. If you're sexually active, it has moved things in you that are amazing. And that's what we work with. In that, yes, there's all sorts of stuff that we talk about. But before I get into any massive, like tangent of that, what I want to talk about is that this is the big problem about when we get into these social movements, when extreme feminism, this is what men hate about it, is it labels us immediately. It changes things for us without getting to know us. And once again, rather than socially connecting with each other, rather than seeing each other's face to face, instead of having a conversation, we've replaced that with judgment. We've replaced that with a label. We've replaced that with the black and the white. The big trap that says, if I'm on the black side and I get a little bit of white, I'm now in danger and I can't talk about it. So rather than getting to understand why women might be saying this, understanding why men might be saying what they're saying, we now pick sides. We put a big wall into it. We put a wall in between masculine and feminine, the unification of all living things, the masculine and feminine. Let's not forget that. We've put a wall in front of it and we become more man and we become more women. And we don't understand each other. And see, I think this dynamic, which has been happening, more than decades, it's been happening for centuries where we put this divide in, and now more than ever. And of course, in the last 3 decades, last decade even, it's become even more that we start seeing how to be a man, how to be a woman through this filter of shit. Okay. And we start developing groups like that third wave feminism that start seeing men as they could be predators, or this is rape culture. We have to always be on watch. And the sad truth is that women have had to go through that. But you know what I hate as a man is when I'm seen as that immediately. When I'm seen as that immediately and I'm treated like that immediately without any sort of action, without any sort of expression from myself, or even just because I work in this. Or perhaps it's a very common thing. A guy sleeps with a girl at a certain area and she gossips about him and all this stuff happens. And then you're seen that way. Then fuck. Why don't you act that way? And here's the thing, here's the truth, is most men don't have the balls to act that way because they're not bad dudes down deep. They can't do that. They can't be aggressive in those ways which are harassing and evil and so on, and that do partake in rape culture at a high level. But the thing is that men get treated that way. That's terrible. But this also doesn't negate the fact that as men, we learn the tools of seduction. We learn the tools of masculinity. We become more of a man. We become shaped and understand our masculinity to harass women. No, that's not it. And here's the other part of it. Men should be able to talk about what they want. Men should be able to say things which might be derogatory, but that happens in the barbershop. That happens within men's groups. That happens with those areas. And man, it happens all the time. Man, I can't tell you, just being in a relationship for the past 5 years, that's challenging. This is a big thing, right? We get at each other's throats. We have a lot going on with kids. There's tons going on with both of our businesses and so on. Is that there's times when we're pissed off. Guess what I need to do? Guess what I need to do when I'm pissed off? I need to talk to my dudes. I need to decompress. She needs to do her thing so that we come together and we don't overreact on our exaggerations when we're emotionally overwhelmed. And man, this is the terrible thing. That's the terrible thing about this. This phenomenon of Me Too is such a beautiful event where men and women can talk now about what they want. They can talk about this rather than what they don't want. Now, this goes into another part of it. There's the social phenomenon, and there's the actual trauma, and then there's the healing of trauma. These are all 3 different things, and there's probably more to it than that. So this social phenomenon, what we need to be doing as a culture is we need to be more pro-sex. Rather than say what doesn't make sex work, women tell men, and this is hard because we don't communicate in the same way, but this is my life's mission with men, this is my life's mission, is that women tell men how to seduce them. Right? Men tell women how to seduce them. Be able to lead in those. And maybe you might not be able to directly communicate, but the life's goal of TSL You know, my work for the last decade has been, men, how can you be sexual and allow the sexuality of a woman to come out? When do you go strong? When do you go soft? When do you do things that are aggressive? When do you do things that are passive? These are all in the scope of sex. There's not just one or the other. It's not black or white. We can't listen to an extremist who's gone through pain or is terrified of sex about how to have sex. And much on the other side of men, we can't listen to men who are terrified of women who've been screwed over for whatever reasons, whether that's wrong or right. And fuck the statistics, people. Seriously, those things can get so, man, just convoluted. They can be so used for one's opinion. It's terrible, man. It is not science. But we take men who are terrified of women and we're learning how to be sexual, learning how to be more of a man, learning how to deal with women. No, we got to stop that. We have got to stop that. Socially, we need to start listening like women. Every single woman who's been sexually harassed, don't ignore them. Don't shut them out. But also in that same, or maybe in a different breath, but in that same woman, there is a story about how to be seduced, about how she wants to be sexual with a man, of how those things happen. And we need to start listening to that. Men who've been harmed, who've been hurt, who've been destroyed, their reputations ruined, and so on. Man, Jesus Christ. Like, rather than hear about how you want to overpower women, how you want to gain dominance, how you never want to not lose again. Because it's really the same argument on both sides. We've been disempowered, we have no voice, we need to gain power back by degrading the opposite sex and gaining power over them, and then finally we'll be complete. No, this isn't how it works. This is not how it works. But rather than that, the story of how you want to feel, how you want to feel soft with a woman, how you want to feel comforted, how you want to not always have to fight. And in that range, there's a dynamic of both. Because part of being a man and part of being a woman is to be strong at sometimes, to give in at others, but to unify and connect in all these different ways. And then we talk about the trauma itself, sexual harassment, or degrading men, or existing in this culture where anybody gets fucked over. And see, this is what we got to listen to. Men who've been fucked over are not lying. Women who have been fucked over are not lying. And I don't care if there's more of either than the other, because right now there's a lot of them. And right now you've built up your divide so big that you're both shouting at each other and nobody hears fucking shit. Men, how have you been fucked over? Let's listen to this, all right? Well, in the court system, they get fucked. In child support, custody, they get fucked. In all sorts of different ways, guys get screwed over. And it sucks, man. It's a terrible thing. You know, when we walk into a room also and we're prejudged for something just by being a man, or a woman has to objectify our sexuality or our wants in a way, that's fucking terrible. That should not be diminished ever. Listen to the stories of those guys. Don't let them turn into a bunch of red pill rage motherfuckers or some MGTOW guys that give up sex forever. And on the flip side of that, this is the MGTOW version of the woman. MGTOW stands for men go their own way, by the way. And so women say, well, I'm going to give up men forever. I don't need men. I can do this on my own. But these women who are in pain, who are sexually harassed, the worst thing we can do is shut them out. Listen to what they're saying. Listen to how they're saying it. Because right now we're having the first page of dialogue of both, which is basically this. Women saying, men, you need to do that. You need to stop doing this. You need to no longer put me under threat. We hear the men saying, women, stop doing this. You need to no longer put me under threat. That's not what either one wants. That's not what either one wants. Both want a way to work with each other and have their urge connect. And it's happened throughout history. This war against one another has gone up in history. Why? More stimuli in culture. There's a whole bunch of videos we have on that and so on. But the trauma, how we deal with that is huge. How we interpret that is huge. And then we move into the overall social solution. Guys, girls, look, we need to come together. We need to see that as a unification with one another. Women, we got to listen to you. But this doesn't mean, for all you MRAs out there, that you need to be weak. This doesn't mean that this somehow disempowers you. And I get it. There's so much that's given out by attention. I fucking hate that shit. right? And there's so much that you can come up with statistics, and women too. I just heard a statistic that false rape claims are only 2% of the actual rapes. Well, let's look at this. And I don't know, but in order to really get that statistic, because it sounds really good when you hear it, and just the men have their own fucking bullshit statistics too of, 70% or 90% of women are mentally ill or whatever shit. Jesus Christ, man, stop looking at people through statistics, because you have to understand how that's being classified. Whatever the percentage is of women being mentally ill, well, what degree? What could be mental illness? Is depression once a month, twice a month, 3 times a month mentally ill? Do you know the difference between borderline and bipolar? Do you know the difference of, having something like insomnia or having something which is, schizophrenia? What's being classified in that? How are these being taken? With the false rape claim, man, I know tons of guys, including myself, that multiple times being accused of false rape. But was it reported to the police? Is that what we're talking about? Was it a conviction? Is that what we're talking about? Because this now makes it much different. Was it something that was overturned from a conviction? Or was it just something that was gossiped about on social media? There are so many people that have this happen. These guys aren't dumb. These women aren't dumb. We're saying things. We have to stop ignoring each other, but we also have to start speaking to each other with the right voice, not seeing it as attack, not seeing it as our masculinity or our femininity being taken away from us and turned into something which disempowers us again. Because the result, and back to the beginning of this, the result of seduction, the result of sex, the result of skills and relationships and sharing your emotions is never having to worry about this and being completely relaxed. And we are not a relaxed culture. We are a culture that is terrified. We are a culture that at any given moment, and the sad part about this is the most fucked up thing, is we are a culture that's going to forget about this. We're going to forget that Me Too happened. And then we're going to only hear about it through extremes, extreme feminism or extreme, men's rights guys talking about the pluses and minuses about it and how it's attacking us in this way, because we're going to have another thing. Before this, it was Harvey, then it was Maria, then it was, the Vegas shooting. Then it was the NFL, taking a knee. This is freaking horrible, man. We live in a culture that is based on fear, with nobody talking, that has all these symptoms of the black and the white, the us versus them, the I'm going to blame you, that if I get too close to your side, I'm going to be put in danger. And we don't communicate. We have no empathy. We have no connection. We have no sex. And when you don't have sex and you're not using your emotions, your heart, your body, your physical, your dick, your balls, your pussies, your breasts, for the purpose of what they are, their expression, their drive, connecting and communicating, you have wars within yourself, which will never be resolved, that are always fighting with people 1,000 miles away, all for right or wrong. Go out, say hello to somebody, have a conversation with somebody that might be different than you. Stop being so goddamn afraid. I get it, there's a threat out there. I get it, we've all been harmed. And I get it, and part of the healing process of all of this is there's a high level of protection. But at some point, our arms and our hearts need to open to see each other. And that's the lesson of seduction. That's what we teach here, and that's what we do. And in that, sometimes there's things that are strong. Sometimes there's things that are forceful. And sometimes there are things that are weaker. And we have them be done for us. And sometimes we hurt. And sometimes we feel dominant. But man, beware of the man or woman that exists on the plateau of one of those and calls themselves human. Because that is a mask, and it's a sad mask to wear. In any case, TSL Podcast, guys, if you like this sort of stuff, subscribe to it. Be a part of our circles. The best thing you can do is be a part of the Austin Men's Development Board, or download our free stuff at the free stuff link down below, wherever you're watching this or listening to this. And man, share in the discussion, because that's what we do. In reality, we're a group of men that we talk about this multiple times a week. And I hope you can join the discussion. In any case, be proud of who you are. Open your hearts to other people. There's not always a threat. Man, life is a beautiful thing. Don't let your black and white ideology take you away from that.